Welcome to the tutorial on how to boost sales with ComeUp. Before watching this tutorial, we recommend you first watch the introduction video, Starting Out Right with ComeUp. It will help you grasp the basics on how to be successful on ComeUp.com. In this video, we're going to go a step further and address different ways to sell more and better on ComeUp. There are two essential parts you really must make sure you get right: the description of your services and the thumbnail. Let's tackle the first point using basic notions of copywriting. In other words, drafting texts used in advertising to encourage people to buy. Remember, a text aimed to sell tends to be very different to something like a written article or a basic product description. Well-constructed copy follows certain rules. The most common being that it mustn't talk about you or your product, but about the buyer. You have to know your buyer really well, understanding what makes them tick. That way, you'll speak their language, showing that you know their problems and needs, and that way you can better convey how your service is exactly what they're looking for. One of the more classic yet effective ways of writing good copy is as follows. Present the problem, present the solution. Convince them why you're the right person for the job. Explain your service, highlighting how it benefits the buyer rather than just describing what it is. For this, a great idea is to use lists and tables. Then reassure the buyer, mention the ComeUp guarantees, and talk them through what happens once they place an order. Last of all, a call to action. Say what the buyer should do, that they should choose which options they want, then click the order button. Tell them what happens next. Once your payment has gone through, we can talk more via the chat box located on the order tracking page. Then show that you're there should they have any questions. Right at the very beginning, when you're talking about the buyer's problem, you're showing that you know them. You can start with 2 or 3 questions to which the buyer's only answer should be yes. For example, do you need a top quality logo that really stands out? Something professional? But you can't afford to spend a fortune on it? Are you looking for someone who does original quality work at an affordable price? You can then highlight the problem, showing them why they're justified in looking for a proper solution. In this example, it could go something like this. Your logo is one of the first things your prospective client will see. It boosts brand recognition and makes you readily recognizable. You know all too well that having a logo that looks the same as your competitors, often one taken off the internet, would be awful for your brand image. Your logo should reflect your company and who you are, and I'm here to help. Having laid out the problem, as we just saw, it's now time to address the solution. Write in the first person, I and me. Avoid superlatives. Never lie about your abilities, but talk about what skills you have. Here's an example. Rest assured, I know what you're dealing with, having spent 3 years in the graphic design department for a communications agency. I was fed up with how boring it can be working for big companies. I wanted to get back to something real, helping small outfits come up with a consistent visual identity, the sort you find at big companies. That's why I chose ComeUp, so I could have a much closer relationship with my clients. It's for people in your precise situation that I have come up with this service. That is when you start describing your service, going into what the basic offer includes at your starting price and what each option includes. When going into the details about your service and options, think, how does this benefit the buyer? For example, vector logo is not going to be understood by most small business owners. Instead, you could say, you'll receive your logo in a vector file, so you can use it for anything, from your business card to a poster ad with the same quality image. Also, don't forget to touch on the psychological benefits for the buyer. Whatever they need, their motivations, go far beyond the mere product. Emotions are more powerful than being practical. In our example, you could say, when you give your business card to prospective clients, you'll be proud of how professional it looks and how it conveys your company's values. This structure really is just one example of how it can be done. Finally, encourage them to place an order, saying again that you're available, that you're the right person for the job, and also mention how the website works. To place an order, simply choose the options you want, then click Order. Once payment has been confirmed, we'll be put in touch via the ComeUp chat box. There, we can talk about your order in more detail, and you can tell me precisely what you need. See you soon! There are other ways of writing copy. It's up to you to find the one that suits you. That said, we're going to talk about the most well-known and most used structure in the world of advertising. A.I.D.A. That stands for Attention, Interest, Desire, Action. The 4 sections your text should follow. Let's take a look. Attention. Attract the attention of your prospective buyer by addressing them directly. Arouse their curiosity. Asking yes-type questions is always a good idea in this section. Interest. Clearly articulate the buyer's problem and tell them why they should be interested in your solution. Desire. Show how your service solves the problems you just described. Prospective buyers must feel they want you to save them from their problems. Remember, emotions first. Think benefits, not features. Action. Indicate what they have to do to place an order and what happens once the order is placed. So that's 2 sample structures you can now work with, and there's so much you can do with them. In fact, well-written copy doesn't necessarily mean writing a very long text. It all depends on your service. The A.I.D.A structure, for example, can be used to write short texts. There's no ideal length for good copy. After all, you're the one who sets the tone to be convincing. Once you've finished writing a convincing and detailed description of your service, you then have to format it so the buyer can easily read and understand it. With the ComeUp Plus Premium plan, you can use formatting features for your service description. It would be a shame not to make good use of it. Let's see how it works. To format your text, click the buttons at the top of the text editor. This will add an up mark around your selected text. It is a type of tag that indicates what formatting to apply when displayed online. These tags use a coding language known as markdowns. If you click the button to use bold text, 2 asterisks are added at either end of the selected text. The text then appears as bold. You click on the eye icon on the top right to preview the final result. Here, the asterisks are no longer visible. Only the text remains in bold. It's worth noting that you can type in the 2 asterisks to apply the desired formatting. The text will be made bold. You don't have to know all the markdown codes for formatting. The buttons located in the toolbar above the text field do that for you. In addition to bold, you can use other formatting. Italics, strike-through, for example, to highlight a promotional offer and cross out an old price. However, this only works for internal links to another service or profile on ComeUp. T1 and T2 header markers. This is used for section and subsection titles, but we'll see that in just a moment. Highlight text. To highlight certain words or phrases. A quote frame. This is great to draw attention to a buyer review or a famous quote. Bullet points. To clearly outline the features and benefits of your service. Numbering. Perfect to indicate the steps in a process, like what is involved between placing an order and delivery. There are still 3 formatting features worth discussing. But before we get to that, let's go back to the T1 and T2 header tags. Select your text and click either T1 or T2. This helps you better organize your text with section and subsection headings. This formatting feature is really important when it comes to search engine optimization for your text. For those of you familiar with SEO, T1 corresponds to the H2 tag and H2 to H3. So make sure you find a clever way of using a keyword in the header text to optimize your description for search engines. But be careful, don't overdo it. The text is mainly there for your buyers, not SEO algorithms. Everything must still be easy to understand for your prospective buyers. Use headers sparingly where it makes sense, or your service description will miss the mark and buyers will struggle to read it. Use key terms that will catch people's attention. Now, let's get back to the 3 other formatting options. Tables. This is the best way to properly explain your offer, especially when you include packs. When you click the Insert Table button, a pop-up window asks for the number of rows and columns. You can also check the box to indicate that you want to give the table a header. That will appear on a dark background. You then just have to add the content to the mockup table in the text box. This is the clearest and most effective way to present your options. You can list each option, what is included with each option, and how much it costs. There are 2 ways of going about presenting prices. If options can be combined, indicate the price for each option with a plus sign before the price and specifying option prices in the table header. That way, it is clear that the price for each option is in addition to the rest of the order. If your options cannot be combined, such as with packs, you can indicate that all prices are total prices by not using the plus sign. Packs are also one of the best ways to make it easier for the buyer to make a decision and sell more comprehensive services much more often. Adding a table is an absolute must if you offer packs. Let's look at this one, for example. It is clear and displays a perfect use of emojis to identify the packs and what they include. It is easier for buyers to understand what the service and the packs are and choose according to their budget. If you offer multiple additional packs and individual options, make sure they are properly explained and easy to understand, either in a well-structured and properly formatted text in your service description, or in another table separated from the first that lists the additional extras. We'll come back to the options in just a few minutes, but before that, there are two buttons in the formatting toolbar. Section break, to leave clear breaks between each part of the description. Adding a fact section, for example, is a great way of reassuring buyers by providing answers to their main concerns. Last item on the menu, emojis. Click this button to open the emoji panel. It's a fun way of adding a bit of color and excitement to your service description. Adding a few emojis helps space out the text and highlight certain points. Be careful not to use them too much, as it will make your description harder to read. Emojis can also be used like icons, so buyers can readily identify each option. Associate an emoji with a specific option in the description of your service. Use it again in the list of options that buyers can select so they'll recognize it straight away. Seeing as we're talking about options, just remember how important they are. The options will really help you increase your average sale. Your basic service, especially if it's $5, is often just an opening. The starting price pulls in prospective buyers who are then won over by your top quality presentation. Throw in a few options that tie in nicely with your basic offer and are a perfect match for the buyer, and you're sure to win them over. So think very carefully about what your buyers need. Don't come up with options that are going to be hard to sell. They must always add something to and tie into your basic offer. With the ComeUp Plus Premium plan, you can choose to showcase a recommended option. Let's take an example. Let's say you create videos for Facebook. Let's say you have a basic offer, $5 for a 5 to 10 second video. Maybe the recommended option could be for a minute-long video. Also, make sure you explain in the service description that you strongly recommend this option because it is the ideal length for a video on Facebook. Bring a sense of authority to your claim by supporting your argument with a source. It will make your sales pitch more credible. Of course, you can also offer other types of options. There's more to upselling than just video length. Think carefully in terms of what your buyer wants, what is already available on the market, what you are offering, and if it ties in nicely with your basic service. Any option that effectively ticks those boxes is one worth adding. Let's go back to the example from before, making Facebook videos. Your buyer wants to use a video message to reach their clients. However, 85% of social media users watch videos without sound. You know how to add subtitles to a video, a skill that ties in with the rest of the service. Including an option for video subtitling makes perfect sense. If you add this type of evidence about consumer habits in your description, you are more likely to attract business that will increase your average order value. This way of thinking about adding options can easily apply to any type of services. But never forget that your presentation has to be clear and appealing. You can list the options in a table, then provide detailed explanations for each in or under the table, or even in a fact section at the end of the description. Remember to convey how each option benefits the buyer. You can see how the written description of your service is essential if you want to succeed. Some things may seem obvious to you and not worth explaining. But while it's obvious to you, it may not be the case for potential buyers. Get someone from outside your field to proofread your presentation. If there's anything they don't understand in the slightest or don't get right away, it needs to be clearer. Also, make sure there are no spelling mistakes. It may seem trivial, but a study carried out by Global Lingo showed that a company that makes too many spelling mistakes in its advertising materials is likely to lose 59% of customers. To sum up, your service description has to follow a logical structure so you have a better chance it leads to a sale. Talk more about your buyer than about you, except in the section where you talk about your credentials. Use proper language with short sentences. Highlight how it will help the buyer. Choose the options well and explain them clearly. Make them appealing so buyers are more likely to add them. If you have a ComeUp Plus premium plan, make good use of the recommended option feature. It is guaranteed to boost your average order value. And use text formatting to space out your text and make it more eye-catching so the most important parts stand out. If you follow these tips, you're going to greatly increase your chances of making a sale and succeeding. Once your description is completed, there is one more thing that needs careful consideration: the pictures to go with your service. What we're about to discuss also applies to your profile cover image. Take some time before actually creating your images. Explore other profiles on ComeUp and see what works best. Which thumbnails do you like the style of the most? Which ones seem to have the best sales figures? How many reviews and orders currently in progress do they have? Obviously, you can't trace all their success back to just their profile picture. There's much more at play, but it does give a good idea. Sometimes you may think an image is poor quality, but it produces amazing results. Other times, a stunning thumbnail doesn't lead to the clicks you'd expect. Nevertheless, it can help you get some ideas. But remember, no copying. Before going any further, you also need to think about who your audience is. Who is your typical buyer? Individuals? Businesses? What's your buyer's gender? What's their socioeconomic background? Approximately how old are they? Why is it important to know who your typical buyer is? It'll help you tailor your service description so that it addresses the right person in the right way. But we already touched on that. The same also applies to the thumbnail used for your service so it speaks to the right person. Examples: a cooler color palette with sleek, straight-line lettering is suitable for a more corporate image, and warmer colors in a handwritten font tends to appeal to a clientele looking for something more personable. The more you figure out who your ideal buyer is, the more likely it is you'll strike the right tone. Now you know who your buyer is, but you're stuck on how to create the right image to go with your service. Here's a clever tip. Browse through ComeUp. Look for services that you think target roughly the same audience. Not necessarily the same service, but the same type of buyer. Open a new document in your go-to word processing software. Whenever you see an image that you like, that you feel targets the same audience and seems effective, copy and paste it into your open document that you can then use as a mood board. Gather together several inspiring pictures. Figure out what they have in common. What ideas do you find inspiring? How can you use those ideas to convey the strengths of your offer and what it is? And above all, how do you go about creating an image that remains consistent with all your services and your brand image on ComeUp? Using a consistent visual language is an essential way of showing your professionalism and personality. It is better than using pictures that have nothing to do with each other, or with your profile cover photo. You have to be consistent. It's known as having a visual identity. It doesn't have to be a very complex document with plenty of specifics, like what you would need for a large company. It's more about having some ground rules to keep your communication strategy coherent and consistent. Create another document that you should call Visual Identity. If you need inspiration on finding your color palette, check out websites like colormind.io, Adobe Color CC, or colors.co. Create a palette of 2 to 5 colors that work well together and suit your style and target buyers. This will give you a better idea of which colors to use for all texts, images, and decorative elements that will feature in your selected pictures, as well as on your cover picture. You also need to choose the main font to use for your images. A good idea is to always use the same lettering for all thumbnails. It's all about being visually consistent. Write down the names of each font you choose in your graphic charter, and in any useful information, recurring graphic elements, size, indication, spacing. Do you feature a logo or not? What about an icon? And so on. You can then give your graphic charter to a graphic designer on ComeUp so that they can then design a full set of service pictures and matching cover picture for your service. If you're not an expert in graphic design, this is certainly the smartest option. It's worth investing in quality visuals. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out how to do it yourself, use your time to fine-tune your offer. Test it out and make sure you're good to go live. That said, maybe you're not an expert in using Photoshop, nor do you want to invest. ComeUp has just the thing for you. There is a built-in image editor on the website you can use to create your own images. When on the Create a Service page, select Click here to use our image editor and make your own creations. You can directly upload a royalty-free image or use one of your own. With the Adjustments menu, you can change different image settings, brightness, contrast, saturation, transparency, and even make it more or less blurry. You can also rotate 90 degrees or apply a horizontal or vertical mirror. With the Filters menu, you can add a color effect to your image. All these features help you customize the picture to really suit your needs. You can also add text if you want. Remember, this image is the most visual exposure for your service. Just be careful not to add too much text, and don't use a small font. You should be able to read the text when it's just a thumbnail image, in a long list of all other services, and even when being viewed on a smartphone. Play around with shapes and shadows to give your text a background. Use the Layers menu to arrange items either in front or behind. The left mouse layer is in the foreground. The right mouse layer is in the background. If you need to manually rotate multiple items all at once, press the Shift key before selecting them one after the other. You can then change them together. The Shift key will also allow you to change the dimensions of an object without distorting it. If you have a logo, you can directly import it into the ComeUp image editing tool. Now all you have to do is put it all together, and you've got yourself an image for your service. When you're done, click Templates, then New, and give it a name. That way, you can use the picture as a template to create another one later on, without having to go through it all again. The position of each element will remain the same. Remember, it's all about consistency. There you have it. You've got yourself a nice looking thumbnail for your service. It's clear, it's unique, it represents your offer and is intriguing enough that people want to know more. It represents you and your business while also resonating with your target audience. It's easy to read and recognize, even when it's extra small. You can also create additional images for your service. This helps to better represent your offer, or even showcase examples of finished work. You can even add a video. It's not easy for everyone to do, but it can offer a real advantage. That said, it is an absolute must if the service you provide is in multimedia, such as video editing, animation, or even voiceover work. It's hard to convince people of the quality of your work if they don't have a sample of what you can do. Top quality description, attractive visuals, and even a video for some. You see, all of this takes quite a bit of work, but it all pays off, as it should help you boost not only your total number of sales, but also your average order price. As you saw in the first tutorial, selling more and for a higher price is the main way of getting a better ranking in your respective category on ComeUp. Think of it as a virtuous circle. A better ranking will also help you boost your sales and average order value. In short, for greater visibility that leads to more sales, this is what you need: a top quality description of your service, visuals that show how professional you are while also appealing to your target audience, the right service that responds to existing demand and can be sold for at the right rate, high sales figures at a high price point rather than selling little for less. You need to also increase your visibility by becoming a verified seller. We covered that in the first tutorial. And last but not least, you need good statistics. That means responding quickly to buyers, seeing all accepted orders through to completion, delivering orders on time, having few orders canceled in the pre-acceptance stage, receiving a good average rating. To ensure your statistics are good, you have to take proper care of your buyers. This is an aspect that is far too often underestimated. However, the way you interact with buyers can make or break your career on ComeUp. For example, a buyer who places a small order with you may be testing you or even the platform. If they are satisfied with your work and the quality of how you managed your interactions, they may very well become a regular buyer with a lot of work. Many sellers will surely tell you of a buyer who started out with a small or one-off order, but who went on to become a substantial source of regular income. So don't forget to treat buyers fairly from start to finish, no matter how big or small the order is. Before placing an order, a prospective buyer may ask for details about your service. Pay close attention to their questions. They may help identify gaps in your description. If one person asks you a question, there are probably hundreds more who had the same inquiry but didn't bother asking, which means you may have missed out on orders because your description wasn't clear enough. You may sometimes get questions where the answer seems so obvious that you consider it a stupid question. However, it should serve as a warning. If this person hasn't understood, there are probably others in the same boat. What seems to be perfectly clear for you isn't necessarily the case for someone who doesn't have your experience. In raising their questions, your prospective buyer has just done you a huge service because they helped you identify something that needs to be improved. Before placing an order, people tend to send messages about rates. So once again, make sure your service description clearly explains your basic offer, packs, and what your options include. Now, it won't stop people from asking you questions. Not everyone reads the full description. Be patient and polite in all responses. Avoid messages like, "It's all there on my service page." It can come across as a bit rude. You may be thinking that you don't have time to write lengthy explanations for each question asked. You're exactly right, but you just have to take the time to respond to each question just once. If you've been asked something once, you're guaranteed to be asked it again. Save your answer. Put together a list of pre-written answers that you then only have to copy and paste each time. If you're well organized, you can easily provide a clear and polite response to every buyer. Prepare a generic introductory sentence in advance with a standard greeting and thanking them for showing interest in your service. You then copy-paste it along with the prepared response and a polite closing message. Only very specific requests that require specific attention can't be dealt with like this. But you're not obliged to spend hours on each individual buyer to understand their needs if you don't want to. That's not what ComeUp is about. Our platform is a place where you provide specific services. When a prospective buyer asks for something entirely else, you can politely redirect them to choose one of your packs or options that best suit their needs. The important thing is to then ensure they provide clear specifications for what they want. One final point on messages you received from buyers before they place an order. Often, they just need to be reassured. Are you available? Do you respond quickly? Are you professional? They don't know you. They may be new to the platform. They just want confirmation that there's a real person who is motivated and ready to help. This is why a speedy response is so important. People on the internet need to feel reassured. Of course, that doesn't mean being on call 24 hours a day or replying in the middle of the night. At the time we made this video, the average response time was 10 hours. If you can't answer a question quickly and accurately, you can always send the client a pre-written message saying you'll get back to them as soon as possible with clear, precise answers to their questions. That way, you have reassured your buyer that their request is being dealt with. The same applies to when someone places an order with you. Let them know as soon as possible that you have seen their order. However, do not accept it right away. First, make sure you have everything you need to complete it. You have 48 hours to confirm an order. Use this time to communicate with the buyer to ensure that you can easily take on their request. Make sure you get absolutely everything you need to do the job. If you are missing anything, you should not confirm the order. Never think to yourself, "I'll get to it later." Don't settle for buyers giving you incomplete instructions like, "I'll tell you that later, I don't know yet." Start with what you've already got. Never accept a request where they say, "Do what you want, surprise me," or "No idea, I'll let you decide." You're setting yourself up for disaster and an inevitable dispute with your buyer. You're asked to make a logo. You need a clear brief, information about the company, its values, what it does. You need to know the buyer's preferences in terms of colors and style. If the buyer doesn't give you this information and says, for example, just the company's name and what it does, adding, "I trust you with the rest," prepare yourself for working more than expected, in worse conditions, while running the risk of having to deal with a dispute. We'll talk about dealing with disputes later. But for now, just bear in mind that if you don't have a clear brief, it's likely the dispute won't go in your favor. So your first job is to get your buyer to give you an accurate description of what they expect. You will probably have to guide them through it, and if they don't, then you can't do your job. Let's take a quick look at an example of what can happen. Imagine a buyer gives you free rein to create a logo for their delivery service. They give you nothing to work with. You create a logo with a motorcycle. They don't like the idea. Back to the drawing board. You choose green. They don't like the color. You come up with a sleek, modern design, but upon delivering the logo, the buyer says they want a different style. It's a nightmare to work like that. Even if you review the work 15 times, especially if you don't set a maximum number of revisions, the ComeUp moderators will have to side with the buyer. It seems unfair, but you accepted a job with a poorly defined brief and without all the information you needed. On the other hand, if you demand clear instructions that you then follow, the buyer can't then change their mind at your expense. Let's go back to the delivery company example. If the buyer's brief states that they want a logo with the silhouette of a horse, and that is precisely what you do, then they say, "The logo is great, but I kind of feel the horse is a bit old-fashioned." You have every right to say no to any revision work and politely suggest they pay for an option or even a new order to have the requested changes done. In this case, should it lead to a dispute, ComeUp moderators would be on your side. You did what the buyer asked. The point we want to make and illustrate with these examples is only accept an order once you have all the information you need to do a good job. Especially since it is even more important that you don't have orders canceled once you've already accepted an order. Buyers can request that an order be canceled once started, but you are the only one who can approve it. You can even cancel the order yourself. A cancellation at this stage in the process is often a headache for everyone. The buyer who still has unfinished work on their hands that can snowball into other projects. The ComeUp platform will have a dissatisfied buyer. You will have worked for nothing and lost money. All other sellers will also suffer because the buyer may never come back and may even spread bad publicity about the website. Whatever the case may be, respectful discussion with your buyer is the best solution in the vast majority of cases. Put yourself in their shoes and try to meet their expectations, while ensuring you and your work are also respected. Be sure to deliver the work you said you would, as described in your service description and as agreed to with the buyer before accepting their request. Do not give them more or less than what you originally agreed to, because you can't just accept everything buyers ask for and work for free. Whether to improve your statistics or customer satisfaction, always do your best to deliver on time according to the timeframes outlined for your basic offer and the options ordered by the buyer. Never state that an order has been delivered if you haven't entirely finished it. You may think that it's a clever way to extend a deadline and avoid a negative impact on your statistics. After all you have to do is tell the buyer, "I'm not done yet. Just ask me to do some revision work and I'll finish it then." That's the worst thing you can do. The consequences may lead to your ComeUp account being closed for good. How would you feel having a delivery person come to your door and tell you that they didn't have time to pick up your package, but if you just say that you received it, they'll deliver it to you later? An order marked as complete must be delivered. Doing the opposite is also a mistake you should try to avoid. Let's go back to the logo example one last time, but this is a very common mistake. You've made the logo according to the brief, but you don't know if the buyer will like it or not. You add the file for the logo to the discussion feed and ask for their opinion. "Here's my first draft of your logo. What do you think?" You end up waiting ages for them to reply, and they never do. You end up with an order shown as being late because you were waiting for their feedback. In this example, if you followed the instructions correctly, when you send the first logo, you should state that the order has been delivered. You can add a prepared message to specify that it is just a first draft. Encourage your buyer to request a revision of your work by clicking on the button. You then wait for them to get back to you before submitting other versions of the logo if needed. They then have 7 days to confirm delivery and leave a review, after which the order status will automatically change to completed. Either the first submission suits your buyer and they're very happy with it, or they ask for you to review the logo with specific revisions they want made. Your delivery message must insist on the process to follow for requesting a revision, because if the buyer doesn't understand how it works, they may just end up leaving you a bad review. We'll come back to dealing with reviews later on. Also, be clever in how you word your delivery message. It shouldn't sound like, "Thank you, goodbye." Depending on what you offer, encourage your buyer to reach out to you again, should they need your services in the future, to discover your other services with a special offer, maybe with one of your options. You can even offer an upsell upon delivery. At any point in the process, as long as your buyer hasn't indicated the project has been completed, they can still add new options to the order. What should you do when you receive a request for your basic offer, but the buyer actually wants something you include in an option? Let them know before accepting the order so they can add the required option to the order or request an order cancellation because they simply misunderstood. Another way to upsell is to accept the order because you have everything you need to do the job, and the amount paid corresponds to what the buyer has requested. But you could then suggest to the buyer they would get more value out of the service if they added one of your options that is particularly suited to their needs. Find a smart way of suggesting the added option. You can even make them a special offer. That way you're more likely to increase the overall order value. Let's look at an example. Option X would be a great way of getting the result you are looking for. I would be very happy to help you out with it. To show my thanks, I can include option Y free of charge. The best sellers on the platform know how to increase their average order value and retain buyers. You can even push for an upsell after delivery. Here is one last example to show you precisely how. Let's imagine you're selling a service and your basic offer is a guide on how to find a job in China. Sure, it's very specific, but why not? Your delivery message might read like this. "Hi, thank you for your order. You can download your PDF guide by clicking the following link. You will also find, free of charge, a spreadsheet of industries in China currently looking to hire foreigners. I hope it will help you as you look for a job. If so, feel free to confirm delivery by clicking Review and complete the order." There. Please take the time to leave a review, because your opinion is very important for me to get my services known. I wish you all the best with your job hunt. If you would like to significantly boost your chances of getting an interview, you may want to send your CV in simplified or traditional Chinese. You can ask for my translation and optimization services for your CV by selecting the CV optimization and drafting in Chinese option. You can add it directly to this order by selecting the corresponding box on the left-hand side of the order summary page. Click Show Options if they are not listed. Then follow the instructions. Thank you again, Karine. In this example, the message doesn't mention revision work because it is for a guide, a finished product. It isn't specific to the buyer. But you see how the message puts the buyer at ease by offering them an unexpected gift, all the while explaining how to finalize the order and leave a review? Last of all, it encourages the buyer to opt for an upsell. It could even take it a step further by mentioning another service that may interest the buyer. The important thing is to be polite and to help boost results. Skillfully nudge an already satisfied buyer to strengthen your business relationship even further. Let's focus on buyer reviews. Being professional in your work and courteous when dealing with buyers is a surefire way of getting good buyer reviews. If you ever come across a buyer in very rare instances who demands more than what they paid for and threatens you with a bad review if you don't give them what they want, do not fall into their trap. As we already saw when talking about requests for reviewed work, if a buyer is unhappy, they can make an official request to raise a dispute with the ComeUp moderators who are, we guarantee it, entirely impartial. We are there to defend the interests of sellers and buyers alike. The whole platform relies on them both. You can't have one without the other. If you are in the right, if you delivered what you promised, it is very likely the dispute will go in your favor. You will receive your payment and the order will be marked as completed and will not feature a buyer review. Disputes can also be handled with special consideration, leading to partial refunds. This is applicable if, for example, an option is delivered but doesn't reflect what was promised, while the rest of the work does. Disputes may also be resolved in favor of the buyer, if moderators believe that the buyer's complaint was justified. In this case, the order is canceled and the buyer refunded. But don't get caught up in thinking about disputes. They are few and far between. The same for reviews. Even if you were to receive a bad review, it's not the end of the world. It's all well and good having a perfect profile with no negative reviews. But some buyers can be suspicious of profiles with only positive reviews and a lot of comments. It may seem counterintuitive, but it's quite easy to explain. They just don't realize that ComeUp never deletes a negative review unless asked to by the very same buyer who made it. Think about it. Before buying a product or placing an order for another seller's service, don't you look at the negative reviews first before the positive ones? It's a natural way of protecting yourself. You want to know what risks you're taking. You're probably worried about getting a negative review, especially when it's unfounded. Well, there's no need to worry, because you can always reply. If you feel the buyer is right, show that you have taken their feedback on board and improved your service because of it, thanking them for pointing it out. This will reassure future buyers, but make sure you have actually made the improvements. If, however, you feel their comment is deeply unfair, don't answer right away. Wait 24 hours, because you should never reply when emotions are running high. Some sellers write back to get back at the buyer who left nasty comments. But remember, who is going to read the comments and your reply? Other buyers. And they sure won't appreciate such an aggressive response, because the dissatisfied buyer may very well have been one of them. When replying to negative comments, show respect for the person. If you genuinely feel the comments aren't justified, tactfully demonstrate why, explaining what happened and showing that you will do everything you can to please your buyer. Again, this rarely happens, and there are professional ways to respond, even though it's all online. We are all real people. If you come across a buyer who is difficult to manage, remain polite when dealing with them. Sometimes you're better off losing a buyer than dealing with poor working conditions. It's not worth proving you're right at all costs, especially when dealing with someone who just won't budge. You can always tell them that you feel you can't meet their request and wish them all the best as they look for someone who will better suit their needs. That way, you diffuse an otherwise tense discussion that leads nowhere and put an end to the conversation. There's always a way to ensure you get to work in the best possible conditions. That's what we at ComeUp want for you. These unique cases are unfortunate, but they shouldn't discourage you from the joy of working for yourself by turning your passion and your unique skill set into a source of online income. Follow the tips from this tutorial, and you're sure to boost your chances of success on the ComeUp platform. You'll join hundreds of other sellers who already earn regular income on ComeUp as they work from home or on the road. You decide what you want to achieve. You set your own conditions, and you do it at your own pace. Thank you for watching the tutorial. We really hope you can take these tips and make the most of them. We'd now like to invite you to watch our third video with pro tips on how to take your ComeUp experience to the next level. See you soon.